The archive breathes like a patient sleeper when the last door sighs shut, and I move through the aisles by a lantern hush, where dust performs its moonlit ballet and paper smells faintly of rain. The keeper of keys waits without urgency, a silhouette of folded years, and lays a layered map upon felt. Thin skins of vellum aligned by pinholes and faint foxes. Warmth wakes it. Lines ripple as if rivers remember their beds, and a corridor opens where there was only margin. My fingers hover, reluctant trespassers over centuries that outlived their voices. In the trembling glow, pillars gather from the dark like patient animals. A hill rises, a song without consonants returns to the mouth. We are travelers of absence, reading rooms that swallow their own light, and yet the path is certain as a heartbeat. The keeper nods, hearing the same distant drum, and I understand the first rule of this place. Some doors invite, not by swinging wide, but by holding still until you lean close enough to hear them think. Stone breathes differently under moonlight, the way a hillside exhales when the day's heat loosens its jaw. Pillars emerge in a ring, broad-shouldered and watchful, each face taught by animals that never learned to fear us here. The wind is a low choir, and in its pauses, I hear the thrum of hands hauling, lifting, coaxing weight into meaning. No one speaks names. The circle is its own grammar, carved beaks and antlers, the vowels of a language that tastes like salt and smoked grain. A fire's red wisdom keeps time at the edge, where scraps of feast hiss like small comets. Footsteps write the floor in loops, then stillness fills the margins. To stand within the ring is to discover the sky is a bowl turned toward you, and you are the ladle that stirs it. The map's fox perches on a pillar's shadow, tail curled around silence. And without a word, I know we have entered a place that was made to be remembered by forgetting. At dawn, the stone softens under rhythm, each tap a syllable in a prayer without a priest. Carvers lean into patience as if it were an animal to be fed, and shapes arrive from the cliff's sleeping belly. A fox mid-proverb, a serpent curled around a question. Smoke threads the air with the comfort of cooked barley. Children run, then hush, then imitate the hand that steadies the chisel. A bowl passes, grease bright as a second sunrise. Gratitude tastes of bitter greens and laughter. The circle is not finished because finishing would insult what it holds. The agreement that labor is a feast, and the feast is a memory you can touch. When the hammer stills, the silence is not absence but harvest. Even the birds seem to read what's been said. I close my eyes and find the same cadence in my pulse. Stone teaching blood how to keep its promise. It is a tender betrayal to bury what you love. Yet tenderness is exactly what fills the air when the first baskets of earth arrive. Footfalls muffle. The circle's throat thickens with dust and intention. Nothing collapses. Everything is folded, the way a blanket learns the shape of a shoulder. Tools are set aside like sleeping infants. The carved animals look past us, as if already remembering us from the other side of soil. There is no lament, only coordination, a choreography of pauses where hands meet, pass weight, let go. The hill swallows its own astonishment. Somewhere a fox prints the margin of wind with quiet feet. I feel the impulse to protest, then feel it soften into respect. Endings can be a form of stewardship, a way to teach time how to carry what it cannot hold in the open. Back at the table, the map cools, and the valley lines settle like a sleeping tide. The fox appears again where I thought the corner was empty, tail curling into a loop that matches a notch on a remembered pillar. The keeper says nothing, but the quiet carries an apology wrapped in patience, as if a page once kept in a pocket has been returned to its shelf. The circle we left continues without us, reining itself inward, grain by grain. An hourglass turned on a century. I trace the sigil's curve and feel the room change scale. The archive becomes a hill. The hill, a page. The page, a mouth, learning to speak in stone. Perhaps the map is not directions, but courtesies? How to arrive, how to feed, how to say goodbye without closing the door. I lift the lantern a little higher, and the path to the next city stirs like a waking bird. The city greets us with right angles softened by dust, streets aligned like careful thoughts, brick answering brick in a patience older than most memory. Underfoot, the hum of drains is a secret choir, water slipping away with the confidence of a rule well kept. Courtyards inhale the morning, thresholds gleam with the damp of drawn buckets, and somewhere a stair descends to a pool that remembers every shoulder it has cooled. I count doorways the way one counts breaths before sleep, and the pattern steadies the heart. No statues tell anyone what to do. Order walks here, without a crown, wearing only the scent of fired clay and soap seed. At a corner, a child drops a pebble into a grate and listens for its long hello. The map in my hand warms, a ghost of lines awakening where the grid holds true. In the hush between footsteps, I realize the city is a promise made to water. And water, content for the moment, keeps its side of the vow. The craft quarter breathes in tiny rhythms, a pulse measured by bead against bead, shell dust lifting like a pale dawn within a room. Fingers sort carnelian into constellations, drill shafts murmur, and a copper blade naps in the shade between sharpenings. There is no hero in this place, only a choreography of small excellences, each decision guided by the memory of how a thing should feel in the palm. A scale tilts, corrects, tilts again. The air tastes of stone and sesame, and the floor keeps a record in shining grains. Laughter travels along the benches like a spark that refuses to become a fire. I watch a line of bowls, each sized to greet water without waste, and I think of how civility learns to sit quietly at the table. The map's vellum presses to my thumb as if to say a city can be a necklace worn by the day, strung carefully so that nothing precious falls between. In a cool room near the granary, clay waits like a listening animal. A tile receives the press of a carved seal, and meaning blooms without voice, a field of signs that feel both intimate and far. Lines curve and halt. A fish leans toward a jar. A grid of strokes suggests a conversation clipped short by time. I trace the impressions with breath rather than touch, learning the etiquette of restraint. The silence inside these marks is not emptiness, but etiquette. A way to let knowledge travel without gripping it too tightly. Outside, the street answers with the splash of a bucket, the call of a goat, the hollow note of a stairwell echo. Someone stacks the tiles in pairs as if matching heartbeat to heartbeat. When the room grows still again, the map brightens at its margin, and a braided line appears where there was only pale fiber before, as though the script had taught the root to whisper. Heat arrives like an argument the sky refuses to lose. Air slows, clay edges flake, and the great river withdraws a fingertip, then a hand, then the story it told this bank all season. Carts lean where reeds have yellowed to a brittle whisper. Roots that once bound neighbors to a day's patience now kink and unravel, paths skirting patches of light like wary animals. In the wells, ropes complain and buckets return with thinner songs. No panic rises, not yet. People adjust, stepping earlier, resting deeper, lighting jars with cloth soaked and wrung. The city thinks with its drains and shades its thoughts with narrow alleys, and still the sun tests every seam. On the map, the ink near the river bruises to a dull violet, the braided sign wavering as if breathing too fast. I understand that even the best agreements need renegotiation, and water, though faithful, speaks first in the language of distance. Evening cools the brick to a kindness, and in that tempered breath, I return to the table of signs. A seal sits like a small moon, its face cut with patient strokes that interlace and part, a braid that seems to move, though stone does not. I ink it lightly, and press the image to spare clay. And when I lift it, the mark glows with the clarity of a remembered path. The braid echoes the map's latest correction, a line no longer straight but woven, as if knowledge were safer when shared among strands. Outside, the drains resume their tireless hymn, and in the distance the river answers with a slower, deeper note. I feel the city settling into its night posture, not defeated, only thoughtful. The seal's print dries to a soft matte, and the fox in the corner approves, its tail curved into the same loop that began our journey, now twinned by another that points the way on. Humidity gathers like a second skin as the path narrows and the low forest folds us into its breath. The first great face waits where the ground cools, basalt polished by weather and the casual kindness of passing hands. It does not stare. It attends. A listener carved from thunder, jaw heavy with stories that outlive their tellers. Vines keep a delicate distance from the brow, and insects whisper along the ear as if delivering the day's news. I feel the plaza before I see it. A hush shaped by expectation, soil tamped by generations of footsteps finding their cadence in ceremony and work. The air tastes of green water and faint smoke, and somewhere a river moves like a thought that knows its destination. I trace the contours in silence, not to measure, but to learn how patience leaves a shadow. The map warms in my palm and the fox quiets, letting the stone speak first. And in that permission I hear beginnings that never rushed. The road from the quarry remembers weight the way water remembers a channel. Logs bruise the soil in slow rotation, ropes sing their tired songs, and a slab the size of a stubborn cloud creeps forward with the authority of 50 synchronized breaths. The river waits below, shivering with reflected leaves, raft lashings already soaked to pliancy. There is calculation here, but it feels like music more than math. A rhythm of haul and brace, of call and answer, of knowing when to lean and when to allow gravity the dignity of partnership. I count heartbeats between the grunts and the brief laughter that punctures effort like sunlight through canopy. The world reduces to friction, patience, and trust, and the stone, indifferent yet compliant, allows a future plaza to crystallize from sweat. When the raft slides free, the map in my pocket loosens, as if the ink itself exhaled, acknowledging a lesson carved in tendons and will. The plaza brightens like a thought arriving. Lines are traced with white powder. Markers gleam. A rubber ball breathes a low thrum against the hand before the first cast. The game is older than the words that frame it, its rules sewn into muscle memory and the architecture of the court. Spectators become a single body of listening, breaths laddered into a patient staircase. When the ball strikes the sloped wall and rises like a rescued star, a cheer unspools, then tightens again into focus. This is not spectacle for conquest. It is a rehearsal for remembering, a way to keep stories moving so they do not pool and stagnate. Sweat darkens cloth. Dust paints the calves. A player's glance finds the sun and measures its descent without a clock. I feel the pull to translate and resist it. Meaning is present, complete, unconcerned with my vocabulary. The fox on the map tucks its tail, content to let rhythm do the speaking. Power gathers like weather and drifts, not vanishing so much as choosing another horizon. San Lorenzo quiets, its edges softening, while across marsh and river a new axis waits to be named. Stakes bite earth at La Venta. Twine tightens. A straightness emerges that seems to listen to the sun. Men and women pace the proposed line, counting with strides, squinting at a sky that corrects without malice. In this careful rehearsal, authority looks less like decree and more like calibration, an agreement between shadow and intention. The earlier plazas do not lose their voice. They become harmony beneath a new melody. I stand at the edge of the survey and sense the city to be adjusting its shoulders, preparing to carry festivals, grief, and storage alike. The map tingles, and a faint correction appears in the margin, not erasing what came before, only turning the page with 2 fingers, so the story can continue on a new line. Evening draws a circle around a quiet pit where offerings rest like held breath. Jade sparks see cool in the last light, serpentine sighs green, and beneath them, a thin plate bears a pattern newly familiar. Lines radiate from a modest center, not a proclamation but a suggestion. A compass that points everywhere politely. I brush the soil aside with a feather and the fox appears again, not alone now. A star beside the tail confirms companionship. The geometry is humble and exact, an etiquette for aligning lives with what does not answer to us. I do not know who placed this cache, or whose hands traced the radiance, and the relief of not knowing loosens something clenched behind my ribs. The map accepts the echo, warming to the match, and I hear the river fold itself into night. There are journeys that end in a square of light on a table, and others that end inside the chest, where directions become a vow to listen. Dusk arrives like a bowl of warm milk tipped across the savannah, and the kilns answer with orange breath that paints the thorn shrubs with shy halos. Clay bodies wait on planks, faces coaxed from earth with a tenderness that feels like listening more than making. Eyelids half lowered, lips held at the edge of speech. The kiln mouth mutters, a soft animal in its den, while paddles pass from hand to hand and slip back into bowls of slip that shine like wet moons. Ash dusts forearms, sweat marks the small of backs, and a boy hums a work song that keeps time for those who prefer to count with their shoulders. When the first firing cracks like a seed opening, the sculptor smiles without showing teeth. These heads will keep counsel when storms forget our names. I feel the map stir in my pocket as if warmed by the same heat, and when I look toward the dark, I see not night but storage for tomorrow's patience. Night thickens, and the bloomery whispers like a reed flute held too close to the heart. Bellows kneel and rise in a prayer of leather and callus, feeding the furnace until it answers with a red that tastes of pepper and rain. Sparks leap, decide to live, then surrender to the dirt with soft sighs. The smell turns iron sweet, almost like blood on a lip, and the air vibrates with a note that settles the mind the way a river settles silt. When the slag door is loosened, a small sun is coaxed into the world, spitting, stubborn, alive to its fate. Hammers find their language, short sentences shaped by rhythm and breath. And the bloom yields, not conquered, but invited to change its name. I feel a thrill that is older than pride. The knowledge that tools transform not just the day, but the scale of obligation. The kiln fires behind us like a memory, and ahead I imagine blades, hoes, hinges, and the quiet revolutions of gentle work. Morning sends the paths shimmering, and trade wakes like birds from a shared dream. Footprints braid between fields and hamlets, gourds thumping softly against woven panniers, bracelets chiming as wrists pass bundles to balance poles. At a crossroads, a cloth is spread, pale as new bark, and on it sit shells that once studied moonlight, copper crescents catching sun, and a handful of glossy seeds that smell like distant rain. Bargains are not battles. They are bridges built with compliments and laughter. So the haggling is gentle, a duet where each voice cares for the other. Children test their futures with toy carts and pretend tallies, and a woman draws a route in dust that erases itself, even as it convinces the feet. The map warms only slightly, pleased that goods travel and stories follow, and I understand how reputation is a currency renewed at every handshake. By noon, the cloth is mostly empty, yet the air feels richer, as if the road itself had eaten well. Season after season, the canopy thins, the way a favorite shirt becomes tender where the shoulder rubs a strap. Charcoal pits heal slowly. Gullies learn to pronounce their names with confidence, and the ground, asked too often for strength, replies with a tired whisper. People answer with wisdom, not blame. Fields are rested and moved, paths taught to curve around the most exhausted roots, roofs mended with lighter hands. At the edge of a hamlet, a council meets without speeches. passing a calabash whose sweetness keeps tempers folded. Families decide to fan outward for a while, to let the land breathe where houses have held it. There is no abandonment here, only a choreography of care, a longer rhythm than the market drum enjoys. As dusk puts its fingers on the rim of the day, I feel the ache of responsible leaving. The map learns a new softness, the ink shading where old boundaries relax, and I think that sometimes survival is the art of stepping back. Afternoon shade cools a storage pit where terracotta faces rest on woven leaves, their mouths curved in the smallest invitation. I brush away the last flower of dust and lean closer. On one, a pair of tiny impressions sits at the corner of the lips, a punctuation I have met before, not quite speech, not quite silence. The promise of both. The kiln's memory still warms the clay, or perhaps that is my hand refusing to forget. I lift the figure and feel the balance weighting my palm exactly where the maker wanted it. A teacher hidden inside a souvenir. The fox on the map approves again, and beside the tail a second dot materializes like a swallowed star, the sigil unfurling from riddle to refrain. Outside, someone beats a rug and the air snowfalls with fiber, and somewhere else a blade sings as it learns to be useful. We pack the figures back into their quiet and fold the cloth, not as curators, but as guests who know to tidy the bed. Wetland light has a polished patience, the kind that smooths reeds into brushstrokes and lets houses learn to float in their manners, if not their planks. We arrive on a causeway that thinks like a bridge and a levee at once, its shoulders squared against water that respects strength expressed as courtesy. The first terraces rise with clean ankles, foundations lifted above the mood swings of the plain. Between courtyards, channels move as if rehearsed, a choreography of glints that pass from one gate to the next without argument. Far off, a drum the size of a doorway speaks slowly to the morning, counting the distance between clouds. I taste damp rice husk and river iron, and feel the map warm where the fox sleeps. Here, mastery is not domination. It is listening hard enough to hear yesterday's rain, advising today's path. I bow at the threshold, and the air answers with the cool of a jar drawn from a shaded well, promising work that ends in dignity. Wargsh, jade rests on the workbench like cool weather in the palm, green that remembers mountains, ring that asks the wrist to imagine the sky. The artisan turns the disc not to conquer its circle, but to trim hesitation from its edge. Water drip keeping dust from cutting the day in the wrong place. In the slurry, a thin stream carries away what the stone no longer needs, and the bye's aperture becomes a small moon you can hold without burning. I think of treaties written in quiet material, oaths that do not raise their voices, agreements between earth and breath to keep one another honest. The fox on the map curls nearer to a faint loop I had missed, and the room seems to lean around the disc, as if the circle were gravity's gentler cousin. When the polishing cloth sighs, the bye returns the hall in a steadier reflection. And I understand why people ask the heavens for counsel by making something that resembles its patience. The master canal widens like a thoughtful breath, and along its ribs stand gates that blink with deliberate lids. A keeper walks the lengths with a ledger in his stride, counting not numbers but pressures, letting the day's thirst tug while remembering the night's promises. On a platform, a child learns the weight of a counterweight, laughing when the water obeys, as if it had simply remembered its manners. Barges move rice and timber as casually as gossip, and even the herons step aside with a respect that looks like indifference. It is all so calm that I nearly miss the subtle argument beneath the surface, the current sigh of effort held in check. The map in my sleeve cools a degree, as if warning me not to mistake serenity for ease. I close my eyes and hear the sluice talk to the field answer with thirst, the sky taking notes. Each gate is a sentence in a language of valves and patience. And today, the grammar holds. Then the sky forgets moderation. Rain begins with the courtesy of a guest, and stays with the entitlement of a landlord, each drop apprenticed to the one before, until the sound becomes a sheet of needles. Embankments hold like good elders until they do not, and the canal's careful grammar stammers. Gates strain, counterweights argue with ropes that swell and sulk. The world reduces to slope and pressure, and the water everywhere at once petitions for new citizenship in every courtyard. People move in practiced lines, lifting grain, bracing doors, tying hearths into boats of brick and hope. There is no panic, only the small tremor that accompanies a decision made at the limit of strength. I feel the map grow humid in my grasp, ink softening as if ready to learn a new shape. When a levee sighs and gives, it is not collapse but confession, a statement that the agreement needs revising. The fox waits, unblinking, while the plain remembers its lake. After the waters pass, quiet does not return so much as rebuild itself. Mud sketches the rooms where feet used to declare themselves. Jade sleeps under silt, and the air smells of straw and a patient kind of sadness. On a table rescued from drift, a bi-disc lies with a new clouding at its rim, a pale ghost that was not there before. I tilt it to the lamp and see the map echo in that milky crescent, the fox's tail answering with a twin curve. Not a flaw, a footnote. The city will breathe elsewhere, perhaps in smaller lungs, its skill traveling as memory does, carried in wrists and songs. We lift what can be lifted and refuse to name this an ending aloud. Some vows survive by changing their address. I tuck the disc back into its wrap, and the archive inside my chest turns a quiet page. Outside, the rebuilt gate leaks in a way that sounds almost like sleep, and the path to the desert gardens brightens at the map's edge. Morning gathers in the oasis like a secret folded into green. Palms comb the light into ribbons, and between mud-brick walls, alleys keep their own shade, the way a book keeps margins for breath. Children run with the hush of practiced feet, skimming the line where dust turns to courtyard, and the wells murmur the oldest lullaby water knows. Above the roofs, a watchtower regards the dunes as if reading a long, slow letter. Here, the desert is not an enemy but a stern neighbor one must greet correctly each day. Offer dates, keep promises, never boast. The gardens are stitched into beds by channels as clean as calligraphy. Squash dangles lantern bright, and grain bows with modest pride. I drink from a clay cup and feel the map's edge thrum. The fox lounging by a faint arrow that was not there last night. It points not forward, but beneath, toward the dark pulse that makes a city in sand think it can last. A reasonable faith, measured at the pace of shade. Beneath the gardens, the world turns to whisper. We follow a tunnel that drinks light like dry bread, soaks broth. The ceiling arched low enough to teach humility. Channels curve within channels, a concealed geometry of patience guiding meltwater and shy aquifers to the day. At intervals, shafts rise like punctuation toward dots of sky. A rope sighs. A bucket knocks a throat of stone and returns with proof that hidden rivers can be persuaded, not bullied. The air is cool and mineral, and the floor remembers every foot that learned to place itself softly here. I run my fingers along a wall where soot has recorded brief advice in transient hands. Measure twice, breathe with the sand. Listen first. The map hums again, the fox tail aligned to a small mark that sharpens in the margin. Down is not surrender. It is partnership with what will not be hurried. When we surface, the gardens seem brighter, as if gratitude had tasted our mouths and approved. By noon, the horizon loosens, and the caravans arrive like stitched lines drawing two skies together. Bells murmur from camel necks, salt glitters in raw blocks, and the air tastes faintly of distant glass furnaces and sea rumor. Under a wind-tamed awning, dates heap like coins of sunlight, and leather skins breathe the cool breath of wells carried across weeks. Bargaining is patient, respectful, hands checking weight and weave while stories travel faster than goods. A child traces roots in dust and erases them with her heel, giggling at the power of revision. The plaza grows briefly crowded as the dunes watch without comment. I feel the map warm at the edges, a corridor penciled toward places our feet will never reach, but our understanding might. When the lines of animals pull away, the sand is unmarked again within an hour, yet the memory holds, lodged in ledger and muscle. Trade here is not appetite, it is the choreography of mutual thirst. Years lean forward. Wells deepen until the rope song lowers to a note that tightens the jaw. The tunnel mouths require more shoulders, more nights. The shafts inhale heat, and the wind finishes what it starts, moving borders as if they were chalk lines drawn too close to a doorway. Gardens shrink to courtyards that can be defended by shade and habit. Work remains tender even as it hardens. People shorten their words to save breath and lengthen their pauses to conserve goodwill. A door once painted with pomegranate now shows only its memory, red hiding in the hinge. I listen to a house settle in the cool after sunset and hear patience arguing with arithmetic. The map's ink pales near the margin where the path once strode decisively. The fox curls tighter, not in fear but in acknowledgement. Decline, I learn, is not a single slope, but a sequence of thoughtful compromises, each made with eyes open and water measured by ear. Night returns us below, where the tunnel wall keeps confidences in soot. A fresh mark meets us just beyond a bend, an arrow, deliberate and spare, pointing down as if to say the answer is already under your feet. Around it, fingerprints make a small galaxy. Each whorl a vow that labor and care can be synonyms. I hold the lamp so the black gleam steadies, and in the flame's hush I recognize the sigil from the far pillars and the woven river and the heads of stone. Not command, invitation. The map warms until its stiffness leaves, vellum remembering it was once skin. I understand then that the author we chased is everybody who learned the etiquette of place and left a note to help the next pair of hands. We climb to the surface, and the palms clatter softly like coins counted by a careful elder. The dunes breathe, the sky erases our footprints, and the garden sleeps knowing someone will listen again at dawn. Dawn climbs the great mound in patient footsteps, painting the terrace edges with a hush that feels like instruction. Whirr! The earthwork holds its breath the way a singer does before the first note, and the plain below answers with a low shimmer of mist that pretends to be a river returned. From this height, the city arranges itself in soft grammar. Plaza, ridgetop houses, causeways that think in straight lines, borrow pits glittering like borrowed sky. Drums murmur from somewhere unseen, testing the morning for fractures. Smoke rides upward as if rehearsing a blessing. I kneel and touch the tamped soil, feeling the memory of baskets and shoulders and the rhythm of people who lifted the horizon a handspan at a time. The map in my coat loosens, corners uncurling, the fox content to let the mound speak. It is not an empire's boast, but a careful proposal to the sun. Let our days be counted by light we have earned. The air cools. The birds briefly pause, and the next path waits inside the pause. On the old circle west of the mound, posts stand like spared trees, their crowns measuring what cannot be held. People file in with the hush of a classroom that knows the answer but enjoys the moment before the telling. Shadows lean long, then shorten, then fold precisely on a mark, tamped into the clay, and the ring inhales, as if the plane had ribs. A child counts in whispers, losing track and starting again. But it does not matter because the light keeps its appointment without needing numbers. I watch the sun slip through a narrow corridor of wood and air and land on the scar where it should, engraving midday into the shoulders of everyone present. The map warms as though the vellum were remembering summer, and the fox's tail curves into a second loop that closes on itself with satisfaction. Here, time is not a tyrant. It is a partner who likes to be greeted properly. When the brightness softens, feet release the earth with gratitude, and the posts return to listening. By afternoon, the plaza hums like a hearth scaled to the size of a horizon. Cooking pits glow with coals, the color of old cherries. Baskets lean against benches as if resting between long conversations. Shell beads catch stray daylight and turn it into currency of attention. I hear the quiet agreements that make a city function without fanfare. A ladle passed to the left, a portion pressed into the hand of a latecomer, a joke allowed to travel farther than its owner. Corn cakes hiss. Fish spit. Squash melts and the smell drifts upward to flatter the mound as if it too could eat. The map lies against my ribs, warmer than before. And I realize these feasts are the ligaments that keep the bones in place. When a circle of singers find the pitch that fits the plaza, I feel the alignment in the soles of my feet. The fox sleeps contented in the margin. For once, there is nothing to decipher. A city is a meal you keep making together, and afterward, the air tastes of agreement. Toward evening, a different smoke speaks from a far quarter, one that smells of wet thatch and argument. The drum measure falters, then resumes with an extra beat that asks for caution. On the mound, runners consult without raising their voices. In the plaza, people stack bowls as if tidying could calm weather. Power here is not a single voice, but a braid that frays when pulled too hard. And lately the braid has known too many hands. I walk the edge of a palisade where logs remember the tree, and ash remembers the fire. And I feel a fatigue that is not defeat, but the cost of keeping promises through long seasons. The map cools against my side, a quieting that tells me we are at a hinge. The fox lifts its head, ears tilted toward the quarter where the smoke argues with dusk. Cities do not vanish at once. They loosen carefully, relearning the art of smallness. A gust arrives, the palisade creaks, and the first stars audition for the job of witness. Night returns us to the archive, not the room of shelves, but the one that lives behind the heart. The map is spread where it began, warm from our hands, and the fox in the corner is no longer alone. Around it gather small signs from every place we have listened. The braid of water, the twin dots at a terracotta mouth, a compass modest as a palm, the soot arrow pointing down. None of them grant authority to a single name. Instead, they settle into a chorus that refuses solo, a cartography of courtesies left by workers, keepers, cooks, players, and those who closed the doors gently when it was time. I feel the keeper's gaze not on me, but on the vellum, as if apologizing again for the page once removed, and now restored by patience. The lantern breathes, the ink steadies, and I understand the last instruction. Continue as guests who tidy the bed. I fold the map on the new crease and hear the world exhale. The journey does not end. It learns to rest.